Welcome to the third part of this structure video. In the last video, we had seen how substitution, movement, and questions movement, questions, WH. So these are the tests that are available for testing whether a certain unit is a cohesive unit or not. So the test that distinguishes between cohesive units versus non-cohesive units are these three. These three are the main ones. So let us examine them one by one. So what is it about substitution that we are talking about? So in the last example, we had seen about the author described the novel to the publisher yesterday. So this becomes the case sentence in which we are going to test each of them. So what is substitution? So we first test whether a constituent like this is an immediate constituent, or is it a cohesive constituent or not. So this is an element 1 and this is element 2. So taken together it's a unit of element 1 and element 2. So if you can substitute this by any other cohesive unit, say for example you replace it by a pronoun he. So this becomes he described the novel to the publisher yesterday. So it's perfectly understandable, perfectly grammatical and believable and acceptable. So therefore we will say that this constituent E1, E2 combination, the author, which is replaceable by he, is a constituent. So there's another kind of a test that can be possible for a constituent, for an immediate constituent or a cohesive group. So suppose one of the elements, like say the author, can be replaced by some other thing, some other. So we can replace it by a boy or a girl, or say for example the janitor. So even here you see that the word author, this element, can be replaceable by a set of other items of the same word class. So it's like a paradigmatic relationship that you can talk about in a relationship. So this unit and this unit together, in which you have the bracketed element E4 and any of these elements together. So they can be given to be a unit together, so it's a cohesive unit, or one of them can be substituted to find out whether it is a part of the constituent or not, a kind of a cohesive or not. Or you can say the part that is the novel can be replaced by it. Or you can say the publisher, you can say to her, or you can say the jailer, or the minister, whatever it is. So here also you can see a kind of a paradigmatic relationship that can be seen as kind of a part of the substitutional mechanism. So this substitution becomes one of the ways in which you can understand how elements are immediate constituents or they are cohesive ones. So the others which are non-cohesive will be ruled out by this kind of a mechanism. Now, but this is not possible with this kind of substitutions is not possible with non-cohesive substrings. Can you imagine a situation where this kind of a thing can happen? So suppose you have a kind of a across the boundary constituent, like describe the, and so this part will become an unacceptable set of elements in concatenation with each other, which can lead to this kind of a substitutional mechanism. So this kind of a substitution. You cannot so this element cannot be made in terms of the intelligibility of this particular sentence. So this is one test. Next test is that about movement. So this is a little more peculiar. So if you say so, let us see how you can talk about this one. So the movement is basically something like this. I can say, if you write something like describe the novel to the publisher, the author had. Or something like his novel to the publisher, the author described yesterday. A little bit problematic, a little bit curious, but it gives you the sense. So it is to some extent acceptable under certain circumstances, especially in an informal situation. So this unit, his novel, or say suppose I'll use the red pen. So his novel, so this can become one of the cohesive strings. So the cohesive strings can constitute what are known as constituents. So this is as far as the cohesiveness is concerned. The third one is basically fragment answers with WH questions, with to answers to questions, which is basically a combination of the substitution plus movement. So when you have a situation in which substitution and movement together can be used in terms of a tag question, so that WH questions, so what, when, which, why, where, and how, these questions can be asked, and one of the segments or one of the set of elements in string can give the answer to that particular question, can give rise to an understanding about how the constituent is set or how the cohesive elements are set about. So let's take an example. Where is that? Okay, so this can be written something like who did the author describe the novel? So you have the question WHO, the question who, the answer to which is the publisher. So you will see that this publisher becomes an immediate constituent, so a cohesive element, so it's part of the constituent. So the and publisher can be taken to be together a constituent or a cohesive unit. Or say, for example, rather than say who, you can say what did the author describe to the publisher. So now the question, what gives rise to the answer? The novel. And so here, clearly, just like this one, the publisher, here you have the novel coming up as a constituent. So these are basically tests that are found to look at the structural integrity of certain constituent parts of a sentence. So this gives rise to a certain kind of a hierarchical system. So obviously this kind of a hierarchy is not without its problems. So what are the problems? Problems are like, so suppose you say these constituency tests work fine, but they are in only one direction. So if they are unidirectional, so to a lot of sentences, so these become unidirectional cohesive substrings. So now, what does it mean? That it means that it can fail. So if they fail, then either the substring is either not a constituent, or it may be that the substring is a constituent, but the test failed to test its veracity for various other reasons. So either of these two possibilities are there, so that so it can be a problematic situation. So where are we? So we have found evidence that our grammatical structures actually treat some substrings differently from others. So some substrings form these constituents, and some others do not form these kinds of constituents. So, but our hypothesis that we were talking about, that a sentence is an ordered collection of words, is also a little bit of a problematic situation. So that we have to modify them. We need something which is better than that. So how are the constituents organized? So we need to look at this kind of a nesting that I talked about in this sentence. So that becomes a kind of a partially overlapping the constituents. They are always fully contained within another system. And this kind of a hierarchical system within the syntactic framework can give rise to the internal hierarchy of the syntactic mechanisms as well. So if we look at the hierarchical system that we were talking about, from the simple to the complex, so we have various different levels, and then you have morphological, you have say textual levels, pragmatic level, etc., etc. So these whatever levels that are there, each of these levels basically can have their own set of rules and mechanisms of internal structure. So you will have the alpha level having its own internal structure, the pi level and the syllabic level having their own. So syllabic level is up here. So syllabic level is up here. So they will have their own internal structure, like you have the onset, rhyme, nucleus, coda. So they have their own, and then you have, before it comes to the morphological layer, so they will have another system in which you have the phonological word. So this becomes the internal structure of that particular set of that particular part of the hierarchy. Now, obviously, you have both a hierarchical setup in different tiers, and within that tier also you have a systemic hierarchy which is part of the rules and internal structure. So it's a kind of a complex organization of how language networks are set up. And this is not unique to English language. This is there in every language. It is there in Bengali, it is there in Punjabi, it is there in Japanese, it is there in Tulu, it is there in Swahili, and any other language for that matter. Even sign language may have this kind of a mechanism, or even some artificially constructed languages like Esperanto, or even Elvish, say for example in Lord of the Rings that Tolkien talked about. So even they will have this kind of an internal organization at various tiers, and also within every tier you will have rules and internal structured organizations. Now, what does this lead us to? So this leads us to a kind of a node-based system in which you have a binary division. So here we assume that every division that you have will have a binary division. So there is no possibility of, well, previously there were possibilities of tripartite or quadripartite divisions, but now the theoretical understanding is that even if you have two-way bifurcated mechanism, so you can actually adequately represent the structure, internal structure, and the hierarchical structure of linguistic organization. So obviously this becomes a part of the entire linguistic system. So you have a subsystem here, and each of these levels have their own subsystems, and together they form a collection of subsystems together to lead us to the point where language can be thought of as a system of subsystems or a system of systems. In the next video, we will see how the syntactic organization is set up by theoretical considerations.